Hi, AGF210, the Sustainable Food System class. I finally think I got the recording on Zoom working so that I can do a presentation for you. This one's going to be on waste. It is the class that was supposed to be on April 2nd. So this is our very first presentation. I'm going to move my head around so that you can see things. Right now, I'm sitting at my dining room table. These are some of the views on my farm from today. The dog is my little Cairn Terrier Fraser. The steer and the ram that you can just barely see are Turnips the steer and Gulliver's the ram. And the other view is a view of some of my sheep. I do hope all of you are doing well. My heart goes out to you, all of you who are now off work because of the situation we're in. Hopefully we'll get past it and we'll be able to get back to our regular lives. Okay, so what I'm going to do today is do a review of the assignments that are outstanding. I'm going to talk about waste management in a local and regional food system. The second part of the class for April 2nd was to watch the movie Sustainable on your own time. I've already sent everyone the crossword puzzle for the extra credit portion of that particular activity. If you can't find that email, let me know and I will send it to you again. Due to the virus and the closure of campus, it does look like our 80% local food meal has sadly been canceled. All other parts of that assignment will be due. Some of them you've already done, and there's a few more that you'll get more information about. So the total point value of that class that assignment will be $150, not 150 points, not 200. Okay. So I have already, I don't know where to put me. I have already sent everyone an individual email detailing your outstanding assignments to the end of the semester. Please let me know if you have questions about anything and we can talk about it. Oops. I want to stress, don't feel hesitant about emailing me about anything. The reason I'm the instructor is I'm here to answer your questions and to make sure that you get the most out of this class. I do realize that this class is not, it's not a cooking class, so not everybody feels it's the highest priority, and I totally understand that. Therefore, remember, you can hand anything in from the entire semester that you haven't handed in right up till now, and I will not take points off for anything. So you have until the end of the semester to finish everything. So the main assignment still outstanding. Let's talk about labs first. Most of you have handed in labs 1 through 3. If you haven't, please get them in. If you missed any of those first labs, let me know and we'll work out a makeup sort of assignment. Lab 3, if you missed it, it is mostly a calculations lab that had a lot of similarities to lab 4, so that won't need a makeup assignment. You can still do that. There are a few outstanding lab 4s from those of you who made it. If you had to leave early and didn't get to the Food Innovation Center to pick up your jar of product, complete the lab. Don't worry about the last that last assignment. Just get the lab in. Okay. Field trip reports. There are a few outstanding field trip reports for field trips 1 through 4. Again, just like with the labs, get them in as soon as you can. The virtual field trip report for the Bells field trip, it says it will be sent out shortly. I actually sent that out last night while I was trying to figure out a few details. having to do with recording these sessions. So that you already have. In the email, I gave you the email address for the person who takes care of setting up all the tours at Bell's. Her name's Shelley Claflin, and she's agreed to answer any questions that you are not able to find on Bell's website. Okay, the next food assignment, the next 2 assignments are part of the local food meal big assignment. The local food map, I've already sent an email discussing the details of that, including a picture of like how my farm fits into the local food system, which gives you an idea of what is required. Let me know if you have questions on that. The marketing parts of the local food assignment I will be handing out hopefully this week. They're basically, you'll be making up a sample menu for your course. And in that menu, I want you to focus on, like, find 1 or 2 possible suppliers for some of the ingredients and use the menu to build up that local producer so that you can, that the idea is to highlight where the local food comes from so that your customers eating this local food meal will get a really good idea, a really good flavor of where that food comes from. The second part of the marketing assignment will be to create a sample social media ad, like whether on Facebook or Instagram, that will talk about a pretend local food meal that you're inviting customers to. Okay, the next one is the reflection paper. I handed this information out a few weeks ago. If you have forgotten about it, lost the assignment, or anything else, let me know. I will probably also send out a reminder of that one next week. All the extra credit assignments are still out there to be done. Some of you have handed some of them in, and that's great. The extra credit assignments were the one where we talked about the economic multiplier effect, and you're calculating the effect of a series of transactions in the local food system. The second one was the crossword puzzle. The third one is going to be related to marketing of local foods. Finally, there's the final exam. I don't know yet at this point whether it's going to be in person or virtual, and I'll share more with you about that as we get closer. Okay, so now let's move on to waste and talk about how waste is handled in the local food system. All of you should be familiar with this diagram of the food system. You'll notice that at the bottom is waste management. Waste management is an incredibly important portion of the food system because it basically links up everything together. It's also something that's vitally important to a healthy local food system for a number of reasons. One reason is because every time we take food off the land as in harvesting it, we are taking nutrients away from that soil. And waste management gives us the opportunity to put those nutrients back into the soil. Another incredibly important reason that we have to do the waste management portion of the food system correctly and intelligently is because, as you'll remember from when you were in AGF210, the intro class, up to 40% of the food that's grown and raised in the world is wasted. And every time you hear somebody telling us that we have to greatly increase food production in the world because by 2050, there's going to be 10 or 11 billion people on Earth, you have to remember that if we can get some handle on how we handle the waste in the food system and reduce that, we're not going to have to increase production as much as we think. So waste is produced in every single part of the food system, from the pre-production areas. That could be where organizations are producing different, like, fertilizers, organic fertilizers or something like that, all the inputs for the food production. And then there's farming itself, where there is quite a lot of waste, and it's waste that people don't talk about very much. If you go to the store and see how they package and sell celery, you can get whole celery or you can get celery hearts. Well, for both of them, a large portion of the celery stalks are taken away and discarded. Often they're just left in the field. That is waste. It's waste that, one, could be feeding people. Two, it is just a waste as far as if we're not using it, and often that outer part of the celery is going to be way more nutritious too than the inner parts. So there's a lot of waste in farming, fishing, you name it. There's waste in those areas. There's waste in the conventional supply chain and in the direct market supply chain. If you've ever been at the farmer's market near the end of the day, when vendors are cleaning up and getting ready to go home, a lot of them still have a great deal of produce on their tables. A number of years ago, it was the case that all of that food, if the farmers didn't want to take it back to the farm, for example, if they had another farmer's market the next day or in a couple days, all of that would end up in the waste bin. And that's a shame. Now we have a few ways at our farmer's market in Kalamazoo where this is taken care of. And then there's tremendous amounts of waste in the conventional food chain, where you've got processing and storage of foods, where whether it's fresh or processed food, a lot of it gets wasted there. If you've ever gone to out the back of a large supermarket and looked at their waste handling system, a lot of out of date and otherwise completely edible food is just thrown out there. And then there's also a lot of waste at the consumption end, whether we're talking individual consumers' homes, restaurants, and other institutions. So waste is happening everywhere, and it's really important for us to reduce that waste. Okay, so in order to help us think about different ways to handle this waste, the EPA developed a food recovery hierarchy back in 2007. And it's an inverted pyramid that shows that the largest percentage of the waste should be recovered at the higher parts of that inverted pyramid. So that's why you have it goes from most preferred to least preferred as far as better ways from an ecological standpoint and even an economic standpoint as far as how to handle that waste. So those methods are: the first is source reduction, reduce the volume of surplus food generated. The second is feed hungry people. The third is feed animals. The fourth is industrial uses, so get more than one use out of those foods. This is kind of like the whole economic multiplier. You're trying to get the most use out of all portions of that food before it ends up at the bottom of that inverted pyramid. So then the fifth method is composting, which creates a nutrient-rich resource to be used back on the farms. And then the final way of recovering that food, getting another use out of it, is either landfilling or incineration. Landfilling is by far the least good method of getting rid of food waste, because when you put food waste, which is organic material, into an anaerobic system, what gets produced? Methane. And I'm sure all of you have driven by a landfill at night and seen a stack with flames coming out the top. Most landfills are not in areas where they're easily connected to a grid where that methane can be recovered and then used. So the easiest way for them to deal with that buildup of methane in the landfill is to burn it off. Food wastes can be incinerated. They do need to be dry before they can be incinerated, and you do get some energy generation out of that. But it's best to be able to get those nutrients in that food back to the land where they're actually of some use in continuing to produce food and promoting the healthy soil that we need in order to produce nutrient-dense food. Okay, so those, I'll go over each one of these, some of the benefits and some of the complications of using these different methods. Okay, so first of all, we have source reduction. That is pretty self-explanatory. If you're an individual in your home or in a restaurant, only buy what you know you can use, only buy what you know you could reformulate into some saleable product and sell. If you can buy from surplus. If you're in a restaurant, you can buy surplus produce from farms and make use of it. For example, that's a good way to do things like we did in Lab 4. If you were a restaurant and it was fall and you had the opportunity to buy a whole bunch of acorn squash or butternut squashes, you could make that butternut squash marmalade to serve in your restaurant at other times of the year. You want to process it in a way that minimizes scrap. So you want to make sure that you have that you're not peeling away all of the vegetable, and that's going to decrease your yield. You want to use things as soon as possible so they're fresh. In larger facilities, whether it's a food processing plant or a institutional type of restaurant or situation, the scrap can be sold into other channels. For example, if you're a food processing company and you're making canned pumpkin, you're going to have scrap that consists of pumpkin peels and pumpkin seeds. Now those can make really good pig food. So those can be sold to somebody else, to a farmer, to be used in their process and things like that. Why is it challenging? These challenges, and you'll see some repetition in the next few slides. There's much repetition with the challenges because basically in every method of food waste reduction, the biggest challenge is going to be it's avoiding doing the thing that's the easiest, which is often throwing stuff out. Scheduling is going to be a challenge in source reduction because of crop availability and also people power. It may just be that when you have the opportunity to buy a large amount of some vegetable, you may not be able to purchase it. And there's also a balance between speed and precision. I know based on what all my students have told me that things are really high-paced in the back end of the restaurant, and it's not always easy to minimize waste when you're in those situations. So the next one we have The next one we have is feeding hungry people. Like I said, within the last few years, the organizers of the farmers market have developed a partnership with Kalamazoo Loaves and Fishes to take surplus vegetables at the end of the market day and put that in their pantry, in their food pantries. So donating surplus to some of the many nonprofits that actually feed the hungry people is the best way to reduce surplus in some situations. Why is it challenging? Well, some of the labeling and food safety requirements make it challenging. For example, if you're a caterer and you've taken food out to people, whether it's it would be in a large tray or something. Once that goes out to people, it can't be given to feed hungry people, unfortunately. You could, on the other hand, as a caterer, give that food to your employees without any problem. A lot of organizations will say that they aren't willing to use this avenue to reduce waste because they're afraid of the liability issues. But we do have those Good Samaritan laws, which protects the donator from any form of liability if they're donating the edible food products to organizations that are nonprofits. And as with all of these alternate methods, the logistics and handling is an issue. You have to have people available and time available to take care of it in this manner. Next, feeding animals. For those of you who were at Western's Valley Kitchen, you know that it's possible to divert some scraps so that it can be used to feed animals. We could get here at the Food Innovation Center, we've got all these growing facilities, and that produces a lot of food waste. Not all of it's 100% edible, but some of it's going to be. We could get chickens or goats or some other livestock here at the Food Innovation Center. Some of you may be familiar with the type of livestock the Food Innovation Center has brought in to take care of some of these scraps, and those are red wiggler worms, so they're doing vermiculture. For larger facilities, just like we had in some of the other options, sale of scrap can go into different processing channels, such as the making of dog food. Some of the waste parts of animals, like at a food animal processing facility, like piece packing, could go into the pet food chains. Why is it challenging? Again, food safety requirements. As you're sending things off to feed animals, only pre-consumer fruit and vegetable waste can be used to feed animals. There's also some licensing required. And as before, all the logistics and handling is going to be an issue. Industrial uses. What does it look like? Basically, it's the sale of this scrap material or unused material into processing channels, such as into the biofuel industry from used fryer grease, ethanol from corn stover, and things like that. Again, logistics and handling are an issue. Technology and efficiency can come up as issues if the technology isn't sufficiently advanced to make the systems economical, especially on small scales. So that's going to be an issue. Okay, second to last one is composting. And these can be a number of different ways of composting. On an industrial scale composting is going to be these huge windrows of composting material that get fluffed up and turned over on a regular basis. And it's all going to be based on the temperature of the compost the compost has to get up to, I think, 150 degrees Fahrenheit for a certain amount of time in order to kill the pathogenic microorganisms that may be in the compost pile. That's usually one of the biggest hurdles for commercial composting, at least as far as accepting food waste for them, into them. Another method that could be used is biodigestion or anaerobic fermentation. And that is kind of like an alternative to incineration of the food waste, because you're getting an output of usable energy. If you have a chance, look at this YouTube video, and you'll learn a little bit more about anaerobic biodigesters. And then there's vermicomposting. Vermicompost is basically the use of red wiggler worms to convert the food waste into usable compost. And that compost is really rich and it's really potent. It's got a lot of the beneficial microbes that you need to really give your soil a boost. So that's how you can do composting. Some of the challenges for composting are the technology. To do it on a large scale, you need some heavy duty equipment, and it's going to require quite a capital investment. There are quite a few regulations that you have to live by. Composting facilities are regulated by the Michigan Department of Environmental Quality, and if you're handling over 200 cubic yards, or if you're handling materials generated on other sites. So that's pretty much going to include any commercial composting facility if they're bringing in food scraps from anywhere else. Neighbors and the perception. If you talk to a lot of people about composting, but even if it's backyard composting or large-scale composting, people are going to basically not want it near them because they have this perception that it's going to be smelly or it's going to attract animals that they don't want, like raccoons and possums and stuff. So you have to get past that hurdle before you can move ahead with that. So that's one of the biggest, these are the biggest challenges for composting. Then there's finally the landfilling. Why is it so easy? It's down at the bottom of that pyramid, but it's really the last thing we want to do. 20% of what goes into landfills is food waste. That's a huge percentage. And then we cover it up with soil so that it can't breathe, and you've automatically got anaerobic fermentation. And that produces smells, and it also produces methane. The reason it's so easy is that we keep it really cheap. It's in spite of what the average homeowner gets charged for their hurdy-curdy of waste, the landfill charges that garbage companies are charged for each container full of garbage going into there are really inexpensive. In fact, it's really inexpensive in Michigan compared to a lot of the surrounding states and Canadian provinces. So we get tons of waste brought into Michigan, and so we're taking up a lot of other people's garbage. So in order to move some of that food waste up that pyramid, the thing we have to do is make landfilling that waste not as easy as it is now. Okay, so this hierarchy is something I want you to understand. Oops. I want you to understand that the inverted pyramid means that down at the bottom of the pyramid, we want the least volume of food waste, and we want to make it the most expensive. We actually want most of the reduction of food waste to take place at the top. So with this diagram, I want you to know the different ways that we can recover food throughout the food system. and which ones are preferred over others. Okay, that is all I've got about waste. Now, I'll talk a little bit about the movie, which is the extra credit portion of the April 2nd class day. You can watch the movie on Amazon Prime for $2, Vudu for $3, YouTube and Google Play, I think, for $4, and iTunes for $5. It used to be available on Netflix, and I only recently found out that it's been taken off. And I have not been able to find a place that it's available for free. So if because of your current economic situation, you can't afford to watch this movie, please find another food-related movie and watch that. The extra credit for watching Sustainable is that crossword puzzle. If you decide instead to find and watch another movie, please write a 2 to 3 paragraph opinion review of the movie, telling me whether you liked it and what you really think it says about the local food system. Okay, it can be anything from, there's a lot of movies like Sustainable out there. One that you might want to look into is The Biggest Little Farm, which is a fairly recent movie. It won accolades at last year's Sundance Film Festival, I think. We watched it through Amazon Prime for maybe $4, but there's a lot of movies out there. So that's the end of my presentation on waste in the food system. Please let me know how I did. Don't be too hard on me. And if you have any questions about what I talked about, please let me know. Again, don't hesitate to email me. You are supposed to if you have any questions. Okay, I'll be doing another presentation in a few days, so you'll be able to watch this at your leisure. And some of the things on this presentation will be on the final exam, and I'll go over those things when we get to the final exam review. Okay, have a great day, and I hope you're all doing well. Bye-bye.